All right, let's get started. Thank you all for joining us. I'm hopeful that this will be worthwhile for you. You find it informative, and you maybe come back and join us the next 3 Tuesdays as we dive deeper on this subject matter. I'm going to start with quick introductions. For myself, Sean Naylor. Yeah. Oh, I didn't want that. Retired Chief Information Officer and Secretary of the Agency of Digital Services here for the state of Vermont after 35 years, and came back in a capacity to help work on these outward-facing cybersecurity programs, Cybersecurity Advisory Council and the state and local cybersecurity grant program. So, in a very limited part-time capacity, I've been helping. So. With that, I'm going to David, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Hey, morning, everybody. I am Dave Kaiser. I am the Deputy Chief Information Security Officer for the Agency of Digital Services, which I'm told is a mouthful. Been in and out of Vermont since 2002, and 25 years in the Vermont Air National Guard, full-time mostly as a cyber warfare officer, and then retired and took this Deputy CISO position. And been doing cybersecurity for the state since, I don't know, 6.5 years ago. So what is that? I can do math in public. 2019?
Yeah, that sounds about right. You can just say pre-pandemic, right?
Yeah, something like that. Well, no, actually, I got hired in during the pandemic. So.
Oh, there you go.
Yep. And I'm the designated color commentator, and I'm disappointed, Kerwin, that I do not have a slide with my picture on it.
Trust me, I'm kicking myself for it. I apologize. It'll never happen again. It'll never happen again.
Yeah, I didn't want that. There, get rid of that one. So then we also have a couple of folks that are from a vendor that the state is contracted with that's becoming a good partner of ours that are helping to administer the state and local cybersecurity grant program. The vendor is Cogent, and with us we have Kerwin Gaines. Kerwin, if you want to just give a quick introduction.
Hello, everyone. My name is Kerwin Gaines. I am one of the leads here with the SLCGP program, and we are doing our very best, to ensure that the municipalities are educated, as well as being able to take advantage of the programs that we currently have to offer, and more are coming. We're very excited about it. I've worked with SLCGP programs with other states now since the inception of the program a few years ago. Fairly knowledgeable in the space. Have also worked with the DoD as well for the past 22 years in regards to cybersecurity, and other private companies as well. So I bring forth some knowledge, and I'm excited to work with the municipalities here in Vermont.
Thank you. And Joseph, would you like to introduce yourself, also from Cogent?
Thank you. Hi, everybody. This is Joseph here. I work along with Kerwin Gaines, Sean, and David to make this program a success. Thank you.
Yep. And the other person that you'll hear referenced over the course of the next few weeks is Callie Audette. She was unable to join us today. Callie works for the Department of Public Safety, and she is the grant administrator. Some of you, if you have done any kind of maybe Homeland Security grants through the Department of Public Safety, may know who Callie is. So she's the other kind of member of the core team. So why are we here? Well, we could probably just distill this down to cybersecurity matters, right? It is becoming increasingly a concern for all organizations. The growth of large language models, artificial intelligence, is only accelerating it. And so what we're doing is we have this grant program through the federal government, the state and local cybersecurity grant program. And what we're trying to do is make sure that we make everyone aware of the offerings through that, and give organizations, local government, a non-technical means to make improvements. And we're going to talk more about that, and what I mean non-technical is that you do not need to be someone like Kerwin or David, who has an extensive background in cybersecurity, to make a difference for the citizens of your town and the information that you hold and are responsible for on their behalf. So we can move ahead now.
Okay.
Right. So just an example that hits close to home. I think most everyone probably can remember that UVM was in 2020. The UVM Health Network at the time was impacted by a ransomware attack, and how that disrupted everything from having to cancel surgeries to access to your patient records, your EHR and stuff. So that is, we are not isolated. One of the things that I like to share with folks is that the days of thinking of cybersecurity as similar to physical security, where if you are a small municipality in an isolated part of Vermont, you have some protections just based on where you are. Doesn't work in the digital world, right? You are just another internet IP address that the bad folks are looking to take advantage of. If they can get 100 small municipalities, it's the same as attacking one big one as far as impact for them. So we're not, being small rural Vermont does not offer a level of protection, unfortunately, in the cyberspace. So let's move ahead. So different things, right? Different common problems, fake emails, right? Classic, try to get people. I mean, they started, I don't know, 25 years ago, right, with the Nigerian prince asking for your bank account information so you can hold money on their behalf. And they've only grown and evolved in complexity since then. We have the attacks that lock your system, ransomware, hold your data hostage, right? You have risks in that. Often we don't have the resources to keep up with the pace of change in the technology landscape. So you may have old hardware and software that is a risk unto itself, or you may have, things like account compromise, because I don't know, nowadays trying to keep track of all the passwords is really just a challenge. And so these are common problems, things that we're going to talk a little bit more about, but more importantly, we're going to focus on strategies that start at the beginning with little or no resource requirement to make a difference. David, this is one of those places I'd love to get like any perspective you have to share.
Yeah, if I can reinforce the two I'd look at most strongly in this list of four is the fake emails that try to trick staff. We see a ton. I'd say 80 to 90% of our issues that we deal with are the result of emails that make it through to staff, and then they click on a link and there's a malware infection on their machine, and that turns into an attempt to broaden access through whatever that malware method is, right? And then the corollary for that is that if you're accessing private email off of a machine at work, so if you're checking your home email, your Gmail, whatever, there's a difference in protection between those two, right? And it's often a vector for malicious actors to gain access to a better protected system by using that personal email as a vector to the work machine. And then the other one I wanted to kind of foot stomp here is the old software that hasn't been updated. If a commercial vendor is no longer supporting a piece of software, that'll slowly age to the point where it becomes a vulnerability in and of itself, and we see some significant compromises that are attempted through that method as well. So those are the two items I would most strongly feature in this list at the moment. Thanks, Sean.
Thanks, David. And one of the things that I wanted to, I'm going to use you in the ADS security division as an example of that you can make a difference without a huge amount of resources. State of Vermont sits at the executive branch operates at roughly 10,000 employees. I think we are somewhere around 1,200 different software systems and probably more like 12,000 different devices in use. Pretty significant scale, right, to secure. Plus, we also provide network services to the legislature and have to do security around those network connections and stuff like that. How large is the team that works on that, David, for ADS?
The direct security team is 12 people, and then there's 300 and something, 50, I think, in ADS that we integrate with security, but that is nowhere near their first job, right? That's a value add that they tack on to whatever else they're doing for the state. So the folks that really think about security as their first and primary duty is 12 people.
Yeah. And I want to use that as an example that in a small community, just because you don't have someone or a group of someone's with a technical background doesn't mean you can't make measurable progress. So just use that as an example. So I think we move on to the next slide. So what is this series going to be about? We're going to talk about the threats that municipalities might be facing currently, or at least the risks that they could be facing. We're going to hopefully talk about it, and I'm going to ask all of you to keep us honest that we are not doing it in an overtly technical way, that we're talking in a way that resonates with you if you're not a technical person, especially, right? I want everyone to benefit from this. So I invite you to either email us afterwards, put it in the Q&A, whatever. Make sure that we are not doing it in a way that is confusing to folks. We're going to tie what we're talking about back to the state and local cybersecurity grant program, because everything we're going to talk about over the course of the following 3 weeks, where we get into a little more depth, is we have projects identified. We're still in the approval process by FEMA and CISA at the federal level. Them taking a 6-month hiatus is not to our benefit, the timing wise, but we are hoping that is returned soon. And in that, we have 19 different projects identified, and those we have one or more projects identified for each of the things we're going to talk about in depth, so that as you hear about these things, and if they resonate with you, we have this opportunity through this grant program to get services to help you address that in your community. And then lastly, we're going to keep talking about this assessment. This is a requirement of the grant program, but what it is that we have kind of a 2-tiered assessment. We have a basic self-assessment that's based on the cybersecurity pillars that allows you to, prior to us coming in and doing a more detailed assessment, allows you to think about who should be part of an assessment, get you thinking about the different things and where maybe you're at, so that when we get done, we know what are the next steps, right? What are the likely projects that would really have the most impact for you? I'm going to, one of the more advanced ones is incorporating active threat intelligence. That's very techy, very complex, and it is on the far right side of a maturity scale that starts at the left of doing nothing and right is a highly mature organization. But we're gonna explain all these things and how they build upon and even offer opportunities by which, as you mature, there are ways by which you can get access to these resources. So that's what this series is about. But again, I welcome feedback. and hope that you will reach out to help make sure that the next 3 are the most beneficial to you as possible. And if you find it beneficial and you have a peer network out there, by all means, share the rest of the series with them so more folks hear about it.
Yeah.
So,
Sean, would you mind if we talked about the importance of the assessment and just add a couple things to that? Could
by
I make
all
a few
means,
comments?
Carol.
So in dealing with the municipalities, I think a lot of it is you know what you know and you know what you don't know, and however that goes, but you may not have had something like this before. You may have dealt with, and I know there is a group insurance policy that you use in the state of Vermont, and there is a cybersecurity rider or umbrella that falls under, but that may change as things progress, and you want to know exactly where your municipality stands. I know that there is a board that most of you have to talk to and have items approved before. The best part is having the assessment you have in hand where your municipality, I wouldn't say is lacking, but there's areas, opportunities for improvement. So so you can begin to develop a roadmap to mitigation to some of those issues. And the SLCGP programs helps with that. And I underline the word help, right? So what they have an opportunity to do, and we've sent to you, several of you, I hope that you've received what the program is currently providing, the 3 items that the program is currently providing. But there are several other items that are on their way. So what we can do is work with you through FEMA to help address some of those issues. Sometimes we can help financially, but also you have the knowledge base to be able to utilize the team and ask those questions to help secure your municipality in a cyber perspective. So I'm off my soapbox, but thank you.
Thank you, Kerwin. Let's move forward. All right. So just quickly, we kind of talked about this. This is the first of 4 Tuesdays that we're going to hold these webinars. Each one kind of builds upon the previous one. So this week is just the overview, kind of hopefully a teaser. Then we're going to go into phase 1, the foundational items. We're going to dive a little deeper next week. And then week 3 is going to be the phase 2, which is around perimeter hardening and identity. And then phase 3 is the more advanced stuff around active defense and resilience. One of the things that we intend to do is for those attendees, you will get a follow-up email after this, where we're going to have some handouts and additional information, kind of takeaways. It won't be the full deck, but it's going to be some more detailed information that will hopefully help give you context around this. And each week we will have new information. So it'll kind of build a little bit of a library for you that you should see an email as we go through the month of June. Why phases? Because you got to start somewhere. Right, this is cybersecurity. I think for a lot of people is the classic. How do you eat an elephant, right? And for a lot of people, it's jargon. It's things that are hard to maybe figure out what is a priority and what isn't. And so what we've done is we've tried to map this out in a way that does the crawl, walk, run progression, so that as you do some things that are low cost, low resource, but build upon those with the next phase and then the following phase. So that's why we're kind of taking this phases approach, and hopefully folks will see that it helps you also measure progress for your organization. All right, phase 1, the foundational. I like this quick focus thing. You cannot protect what you don't know you have. And so the foundational one starts with really 3 things that are of really no resource or very little resource requirement. And that is having somebody take ownership right, in the organization, and to kind of be like, yeah, I'm gonna kind of be the cyber person for us. I know often that this may be just another hat that someone has to wear in the organization. They also may be the emergency management coordinator. They may be, secretary or treasurer, in a lot of roles. But having that acknowledgement, I think, is important to build from. The second is an asset inventory, right? Not assuming you know where every computer, printer, network attached photocopier, if you run a water system, where all the operational technology, right? Making sure you have an inventory of what you have. And it can start by simply paper, pen, clipboard, going around and just making sure you know what you have and where it is. And then the last one is getting some basic governance policies. We're going to dive into these. These 3 items will be next week's focus, and we can talk about what those look like. But again, it's with the tools available today, whether they be through organizations like the Center for Internet Security, NIST, Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency. There are plenty of ways to get started on that, and the state of Vermont also, through the SLCGP program, offers resources, projects by which we can have a cybersecurity vendor come in and help you create those policies and get them adopted and figure out what's appropriate for your organization, for your town. David, anything that, let's go back to phase 1.
I actually stuck my hand up there for a second. I was going to talk about asset inventory and what a challenge that can be, because it's dynamic, right? Assets change over time. They're not easy to track in both a physical and a virtual sense. There may be things connected to your network you're not aware of. Those are interesting things to find, and especially with a user base like ours in the state, where we've got 12,000 plus machines in the mix, there's a lot of change that goes on. So just because it's foundational doesn't mean it's simple. And it's an ongoing process where we're learning depending on the scale of the organization that we're dealing with, right? So one of the things I think Sean's going to talk about in the next couple slides is not just an assessment of a self-assessment, but an assessment with a member of this group, where we help you think through the potential processes of how to go through these steps. And again, the foundational piece is a really interesting piece to start with. So I'll get off my soapbox and let it go back to you, Sean.
Thank you, David. And I think we're going to touch on this. Probably this one will get a deeper conversation next week, because there's the whole, also, if you're familiar with the term BYOD, right? Bring your own device. I think organizations that allow business work to be done with personal devices run a whole next level of complexity and what that means. So we'll explore that some more. So let's move on to the next slide. All right, so phase 2, we're starting to, we have our foundational elements in place, our basic building blocks. Now we're going to look and start to build a more secure environment, which should really address the most common and automated types of attacks. And one of the things that I want to say is I love this. I didn't create this quote, but I love it, and it's that you're never, I shouldn't say never, because we don't know what the future holds. The reality is you're not going to be completely resilient or hardened against cyber threats. What you want to get to is the point by which the bad guys are spending too much time or effort to trying to gain access to your system. They go, right, they're looking for the low-hanging fruit. So if you have everything you do that makes it a little bit harder for the bad guys to gain access or to take advantage of you, you're going to delay them, and that delay is what just is going to be like, yeah, not worth it, and they're going to move on to the next target. So thinking that, keeping things in that, right, that there's not perfection, right? We're just trying to make it really hard so they seek somebody else out, which is unfortunate to your neighbors. But so this phase, right, hardening that, we start talking about multi-factor authentication, right? So not just relying on passwords, and credentials to gain access to systems. We talk about perimeter security, right? Do you have firewalls in place? What are you doing to protect your environment? Those types of things. Vulnerability management. The statistics are out there, right? But it's a really high number of cyber events that can be traced to vulnerabilities that were known and had a fix out there, but people had not applied them. And so it was exploited. And then .gov. If you are using a .com, .org, .net, one of the other extensions for either email or public-facing resources, websites, things like that, moving to .gov is an important piece of becoming resilient due to how those are issued and the steps you have to go through to be issued a .gov domain. So, anything to add, David?
So MFA and .gov are the two items on this list that are in the current iteration of SLCGP, and they're there because we think they're such a basic requirement for bringing yourself to that first level of security, I guess, for lack of a better way of saying it. And I mean, I'll leave it at that. We chose them for that reason specifically, and they're a good first step, even though they're technically in phase 2, right? But they're maybe the easiest for us to encapsulate in a program and bring out to the towns as a way for them to step into security.
Yeah, very good point, right? They are, you could argue that they are foundational. They're definitely important, but they do come with a cost, whether it's like physical devices, licensing, there's a cost associated with it, but that's why the SLCGP program is offering these as projects. All right, I think we can move forward. And then phase 3, right? If you've noticed, each one of these is growing in the length of items, right? Because as you mature, as you move down the path, you're going to find that it opens up more opportunities to do things, right? Each one you're building upon the previous. So phase 3 is really starting to get be more active, or having a vendor on your behalf, or someone being proactive in managing your environment for threats and being prepared for that worst day, right? If something happens, do you know what to do, how you're going to respond, those types of things. So we talk about endpoint detection and response. We talk about verified backups, right? There's a lot of people may be running backups, but are you testing them frequently? Are you making sure that you can restore? Can you know with confidence, can you restore your neighbor's information in a trusted way so that they're not without services for maybe weeks at a time? Security awareness training. We've talked about, I think we talked about it with email and phishing, right? The human side of it. A continuous program of reminding people to not send the Nigerian prince money is important. I think David alluded to something like 80 or 90% of their work on follow-up is related to risks that came through, like email and employees clicking on something. An incident response plan. If you ever get to the point by which you do have a compromise or a cyber event, this is your break glass thing. You don't want to be figuring it out as you go. This is not one of those places to do that. External partner risk management. That sounds really fancy, but all it means is for those people that you work with, what are you doing to make sure that they're not going to compromise you, right? Are they trusted? What are you doing to make sure that, if you're giving someone access to a system because they're a subcontractor, what are they doing for due diligence to not undermine the work you've done to be more cyber resilient? And then the last one, active threat intelligence. We talked about that a little bit, right? That's really understanding what's going on real time. There are even tools that allow for active threat intelligence to be dynamic in maintaining things like firewall settings and stuff like that. So we can talk about that more in phase 3. But that is the That's the progression. David, what do you got for thoughts in this list?
Yeah, like Sean and I were talking about this yesterday, day before, and kind of thinking about how there are equivalents to town functions in almost all these categories that already exist, right? Endpoint detection and response is a lot like physical security around your assets, and or if you've got cameras that watch any of your buildings, that kind of thing. Verified backups is the equivalent of testing and maintenance on equipment so that when it's needed in, say, snow season, you've got it set up and ready by the end of fall, so it's good to go. Security awareness training is understanding the domain that you're working in. Incident response plans, equivalent of an emergency plan for the town for whatever. Weather is the typical response plan, but if you've got critical infrastructure, especially water, wastewater management, then you've probably got some response plans around that you've already built. And external partner risk management is very much knowing who you're doing business with by your reputation and previous history. And even threat intel, right? Think about understanding the weather or current events that affect your town. The example I thought of as I was watching Sean go through this again was when the vice president went to Warren, Vermont to do a vacation. Suddenly Warren's dealing with what entities are going to show up, dealing with Secret Service, dealing with potential protests in the Mad River Valley, that kind of thing. So this is maybe an equivalent function, but for cyber events, cyber weather, if you want to call it that, how active things are on the internet in general. And then specific things that may affect your town or your type of entity, I guess, for lack of a better way of saying it. And yeah, I'll leave it at that, John.
Oh, those are really good. As soon as you started talking about the analogy with the vice president, I was thinking the same thing, right? With weather events. Often Vermont Emergency Management, right, will have weather updates going out to emergency coordinators, especially in areas that are either high risk or experiencing something. And that's all intelligence, right? That's all trying to keep you informed of what's coming so you're better prepared, whether that means it helps you stage equipment somewhere, whether it means, right, those kind of things. They're very, very analogous to things that we're already doing. So good thoughts. Thank you, David. Let's move forward. Here we get to talk about the assessment. And so we've been talking about this, right? Really what it's doing is helping us and yourselves establish a baseline understanding of where you are from a cybersecurity perspective, what gaps you may have, where is the most appropriate place to invest first, and then what should come afterwards, right? So if you do not have a means it would not be prudent to help a municipality invest in active threat intelligence if they don't have an incident response plan, right? So there is a certain amount of understanding where you're at, and there's also maturity levels in this, and we're going to get into this as we go through the next webinars, talking about there is there's a point of entry, but there's even within these areas that we're going to talk about, there's a continuum of maturity that can happen within them. So this assessment is also a requirement of the state and local cybersecurity grant program. And what it will be is it'll be myself, it may be Kerwin, it may be somebody like David or somebody from his team, either coming out in person or holding a Teams meeting or virtual call, and going through a fairly detailed questionnaire, and it allows us to be consistent and truly to understand where you are at, and what we can do to try and help you. The assessment is, I think, pretty well thought out at this point. It's kind of been sourced from a number of different areas. Kerwin at Cogent brought the initial, and then we've kind of gone through iterations as we've done some pilots with some towns and stuff. And I think the assessment is pretty sound now. So David, I'll look to you, and then Kerwin, if you guys want to add anything at this point around the assessment.
Yeah, I haven't been deeply involved in the assessment process, so in my mind, it's primarily the intake, the team getting to help the town think through, almost in the consultant role, what makes sense for the SLCGP program, right? But as for the nuts and bolts of how and when and what the process is, I'll leave that to Kerwin or maybe you, Sean.
Yeah,
Kerwin.
the process I like to think of it is when you take your car. Some people actually take their car to the dealership for repairs, and you say, "Well, what's wrong?" Right? And you don't want to trust the people that are going to charge you in regards to them telling you what's wrong with your car. But with this assessment, it's unbiased. So when you're having those nights where you're staring up at the ceiling at 2 o'clock in the morning and you're thinking, how can I protect the network of my municipality? You now know exactly. You have a line item details on saying, hey, we need to address this, we need to address that, and we need to address this. The other part is SLCGP is working side by side with you in doing that. We understand that, change starts with you as a municipality, but utilizing our programs, we can take a lot of that burden from you, not all of it, but some of it, and ensure that your municipality is cyber ready. So it is something that I highly recommend, just for that knowledge base. If you have to go back to your board and tell them kind of where do we currently stand, you as town managers and administrators within those towns now know exactly where you stand. So I think it's a wonderful benefit that we offer, and I look forward to meeting a lot of you out there while we're doing it.
Thank you, Kerwin. So I keep trying to say, right, that we're trying to keep this to like the practical. While there's a lot of technology that goes into this, there's also a lot of experience that's been brought to bear to like distill it down to like, what is it like fundamentally that we need to do? What is the things that just are practical, right? Asking, I'm going to pick on my former high school classmate and say, it's not reasonable to ask the town of Leicester to participate in a security operations center right now. That's not, would not be resources well spent for a community the size of Leicester. There's a lot, we could get a lot more benefit from some other practical things that would really move the needle. So we're looking at, we're trying to stay consistent with that, right? That we're trying to get people to be able to understand, the risk of email, why multi-factor authentication is important, why patching and keeping devices updated is important, inventory backup planning, right? All of that stuff, why it's important, why it's practical, and why we've identified projects through the SLCGP to assist with it. Let's slide forward.
We did. Did you not? Did you want me to go beyond this one too?
Oh, I'm still seeing practical steps matter. Oh, there we go. Thank you, Kerwin.
No problem.
We're also trying to bear in mind, right, that this is, like state government, sure, all towns do not have all the resources they need to fulfill all the missions that they have and provide services to their friends and families and neighbors, right? So we're trying to also work from that perspective of trying to not make this be a burden, but to be beneficial, right? Keeps coming back to like clear, practical, useful, right? There's that practical word again. That's what we're focused on doing. One of the things I was thinking about this, and I was like, it never, and I know this is like, one of the challenges is whether it's education funding, whether it's resiliency of your local roads to the next 100-year flood event, right? Whether it's maintaining a road crew that is responsible and understands the community, right? All those, there's a lot of demands on local government. And I was thinking back to the idea that back in my transportation days, wouldn't it have been interesting if the state 30, 35, 40 years ago started incentivizing communities to not replace culverts with the smallest, the cheapest one they could do, but started incentivizing them to put large culverts in, starting to build the resilience against natural disasters, right? That now you're doing, because to have purchased and installed a culvert 30 years ago is a lot cheaper than doing it now. And while I know that cyber is competing against all those other things, the reality is that investments today, especially through grant programs like the state and local cybersecurity grant program, which is, I think year one is 100% funded and year two is 80% funded. It'll never be cheaper to make these. And I also look at it as it's a lot like planning for retirement, right? That dollar invested when you're 25 years old yields a lot more return than, or how many dollars you have to invest at 45 to get to the same goals. And so it's starting to think about how we start to make small incremental change that has real benefit and protects Vermonters' information. David, anything to add?
No, I think you covered it pretty well, particularly the early cheap is a relative thing, early lower cost investment up front, as opposed to the cost of responding and rebuilding on the back end of something, right? I've seen estimates of 1 or 2 million per incident for municipalities in cleaning up and rebuilding after the fact. So
Yep.
The investment up front is definitely worth it in order to try to avoid that cost on the back end.
I always think back when I was in high school, if I could have been smart enough to buy my lifetime need of gasoline at 79 cents a gallon, how happy I would be right now. Right? Inflation just, it impacts everything.
But think of all the storage costs for all that gasoline.
I just have buried a tank back before it was a big deal. I'd be fine. But anyway, moving right along through the slides. So what comes next? We've been talking about it. Next week, we're going to talk about the phase 1 foundational stuff. We're going to dive deeper on it. And then phase 2 the following week, and phase 3 in our final week. We have a couple of ways by which you can contact us. So there is a web page. I should probably post that in the chat or in the Q&A. And where you can reach out, and there also is an email. Let me get the URL. I'm going to post that in the Q&A, so everyone should see that. If you want, you can click on it. It's going to give you more information, and there's kind of a contact form. And that will go to those that were for the state team that was on the call, plus a few others, so that it's not one single individual that's worried about it getting lost in the inbox. So
it's on the question slide too, right?
I believe it is. So if we keep going forward, there we are. And then this is the direct way. So if you don't want to use the contact form that's on the website, you can use ads.slcgp@vermont.gov. And you see, we practice what we're preaching here. We're .gov. So it would be kind of like ironic if we didn't. So I think at that point, we're at the end of me talking before I lose my voice and want to open it up. I think you all have the ability to either come off mute and ask questions or post them in the Q&A if you see that. But we'd be glad to answer any questions or get feedback right now.
It might be a good idea, Sean, to kind of cover, if we want to cover the SLCGP program as a whole. We love to think that everyone is in on it, but maybe they're not. So as we're going through, we might be able to explain that a little bit.
I was going to dive deeper in as we did the projects and stuff in the next ones, but yeah,
Okay.
we can touch on it. The state and local cybersecurity grant program is an interesting grant program that's from the Department of Homeland Security, administered by FEMA primarily with the assistance of CISA. It funds, how Vermont has chosen to do it, it funds services that Vermont will secure state government, the executive branch, on behalf of municipalities to help do this. So one of the interesting things that I think leadership recognized in Vermont was that maybe small municipalities do not have the resources to be able to contract, right? How do you even begin to write a statement of work to help you solve one of these areas that needs attention? Or do you have a contract lawyer to negotiate terms and conditions and all that stuff? And so what the state of Vermont has done is we said, we will take that on. We have a group of pre-vetted contractors that we call the retainer pool. So they've already agreed to our terms and conditions. And so if one of you wants to do a project to implement modern firewalls at all of the sites that are in your community, we can procure those, and we can have vendors come in to do all the configuration and installation. And so you won't have to worry about writing contract language, any of those things. So that's kind of like an overview. I don't know what I'm glossing over, Kerwin, that you think would be also important for them to know.
I think we hit it, just going over the 3 projects that we have now, and that hopefully within a few weeks, we should have some more projects that will be readily available.
Yep. The 3 are the multi-factor authentication implementation, migration of your domain to .gov if it isn't already, and also some security plus training through CompTIA and test and certification available. And then there's a project to administer the plan and do that stuff itself. And then on top of that, we have 15 new projects that cover all of the things we talked about in the overview today that are in that review and approval process. So, and we'll talk about those individual projects as we go through the slide decks, the webinars, in the out weeks.